Good morning and welcome to the Prairie. I decided to take Isaac for a walk at this little wildlife recreational area. And what you see is mostly prairie. There's Isaac. There's just prairie, my old car. Prairie, prairie, prairie. Hear geese overhead? It's gorgeous. Beautiful, beautiful. Gorgeous morning. Alright, it is now late afternoon. Isaac and I had a lovely walk on the prairie. I spent a lot of time outside with him today. Come here, you're ready for a treat? Of course he is. Yeah, he's ready for a treat already. And now here comes Sassy. She's upset because she says, don't give that dog a treat and not me. I like treats. Okay, so this is maybe going to just be me kind of rambling some more, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of our history, our culture, our tradition, and I'll explain what I mean by that, or I'll try to, and how we can draw upon that in times of trouble. So when I was first planning to move to Nebraska, I found myself really drawn to stories, both like diaries and factual accounts, as well as novels, historical novels, about pioneers moving west, immigrants coming from Europe, Scandinavia, even Russia, to come out west and homestead here, and then also some people who had been living in the eastern part of the U.S. who decided to move west and homestead for various reasons. But it was mostly that they believed they were creating a better life for the future, and a lot of people felt they were doing it for their children. They felt they had to do it. They felt that that it was the right decision, but it was terrifying. But you know, they were ready to let go and give up everything they'd known and go into this vast unknown. And I wonder how much they were aware of all the dangers they faced. You know, if you and your spouse and, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 kids left in a covered wagon, there is a good chance you would not all still be alive when you got out west and to homestead. There's a good chance 1 or more would die along the way. People died of all kinds of things on the way: accidents, injuries, illness, Indian attacks, just all sorts of things. And you know, they'd bury the people along the way. A lot of times they actually buried bodies under the road, not beside the road, but they dug up a hole in the middle of the road, which was like a dirt track, and then put the dirt back on top of the grave. And then as wagons rolled over it, they packed the dirt down, which made it harder for wild animals to dig up the bodies. And sometimes they put a cross by the side of the road, but a lot of times there just wasn't time to do that. There wasn't anybody with the strength to do that. You know, it was just, you buried the person, you said goodbye, and you moved on. And I think about that and think about your loved one being under the road and knowing that these people, you know, in days and weeks and months to come would be driving their wagons over your loved one's grave and not even know that beneath their wheels was someone that you had loved. And we don't know where these people are buried today and how many are buried underneath where these wagon trails were. We know where some of the trails were, but we don't know who's buried under them. And so I'm looking at, we're, you know, approaching this. Well, let me, I'm getting ahead of myself. So when I was moving out here, I felt like, I talked a little bit, I think, before in one video about why I moved to Nebraska, and I was having a really bad situation where I lived in Ohio, and it was what I really needed to do, and it was terrifying. And people kept telling me, well, if you don't like it out there, you can just move back. And I'm like, no. I mean, maybe I could someday, but it's not like I could right away. I wouldn't have the money to move back. Subsidized housing in many places has waiting lists. That's one of the reasons I moved to Nebraska, because I could get housing with no waiting list. In Ohio, there was a long waiting list. I was like, I could move back someday, but it's not like I can move back anytime soon. I'm going to go there, and I was determined to like it because it was like, I'm going to be there. And I feel like I have no choice but to like it, but I guess I could have been miserable and hated it. But since I had no choice but to be there, I was going to do my best to like it. And I just really Like, I knew I was saying goodbye to people, many of whom I would not see again. Not that Ohio is so far away that you can't drive back. It's not like I was coming from Norway or Denmark. But, you know, it was people that I knew I wouldn't see again, or I wouldn't see them often. And I knew life was going to change, and I really related to those stories. Now, I know there's another history that goes back further here. There's the Native Americans who were here long before the European Americans who settled and homesteaded here. And that's a history I don't know much about, and I want to learn more about in the future. But it was almost like a mythology to me that I could really relate to those homesteading stories. So now we find ourselves facing this COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm going to call it a pandemic. I don't care what the World Health Organization calls it. It's in like over 60 countries now, I believe. I think it's a pandemic. Anyway, is it in over 60 countries? I can't even keep track. It's in a whole lot of places and probably going to be in more every day for a while. I'm calling it a pandemic. So I think there's kind of this surreal feeling this weekend. This is Saturday. Like in my town, things are pretty much the same. I went to the dollar store this morning. I wanted to get some more cold medicine and some more Benadryl. And when I was there, I noticed that there didn't seem to be a shortage of anything on the shelves, but I did notice that prices had gone up. A bottle of cold medicine that I spent, I believe, $4.75 for like 2 months ago. The same size bottle today was $8. And I've heard other people say that the price of like bottled water and stuff where they are has gone up. And so I think we're seeing that. So I've got this plan, right? Tomorrow I'm cleaning up my refrigerator. I'm doing some things at home. Monday I'm taking Isaac to the vet to get his vaccines in the morning. In the afternoon I have an appointment with my psychiatrist I did a video earlier about what I plan to do about my meds. So hopefully I get that worked out. Then either Tuesday or Wednesday, I plan to do a last shopping trip to Walmart. Well, unless things stay better longer than I think, and then I guess I'm going to keep shopping as long as it's safe to go out and keep shopping and stocking up more stuff. But I'm kind of looking at that being my last Walmart trip. I could live without it, but I'd really like to get a few more things if it's safe to go. And if I'm going to have to go there to get prescriptions, then I might as well do that, right? So there'll be one last shopping trip, and that might be on Tuesday or it might be on Wednesday if I think it's safe to wait until Wednesday. And after that, I'm going to basically self-quarantine or shelter in place and just not go very many places. But there's this surreal feeling because in my town, I don't see people getting ready. And even most of my friends are like still acting like they don't see how it's a big deal, or they think it's going to just somehow all be okay. And you know, I'm sitting here talking to people and stuff online and today, and I'm thinking, you know, here, Isaac, give me your toy, give it. And I'm thinking, you know, we are not all going to survive this. I don't know which of us are, and hopefully most of us will, but maybe some of us aren't. I have a friend who's in another state, and she's in a skilled nursing facility. And so I was feeling really worried about her, and I don't know if she watches these videos or not, and so I'm hesitant. Let's see, I'll say I think that if a patient, a resident in a skilled nursing facility gets infected, it'll spread pretty easily through the facility really quickly before people realize that that's what they're dealing with. And so it seems like any kind of a place where there's a lot of people in a confined place, whether it's some sort of a group home, a prison, a nursing home, a boarding school, army barracks, anything like that. A lot of people in a small area seems like it's going to spread really quickly. And in many of those situations, not all of them, but in many of them, you don't have a lot of choice about being there, right? And there's not a lot of steps you can take really to protect yourself. So I asked my friend how she was feeling and if she was stressed about it. And she said, no, it's not like the other residents in this nursing facility are, traveling. And aides wear gloves when they're helping patients, and they're encouraged to wear masks when they're bathing patients and stuff, and that's great. I used to be a CNA many years ago. We wore gloves for a lot of things, but we sure didn't wear masks. And, you know, so that's great. I'd be concerned still if it was me in the nursing home, but it's not. And so I was glad that she wasn't worried. And then right after that, I saw a story that there were 2 cases in a nursing home in a different state. And, you know, I have some friends who have serious medical problems, that if they can't get medication, it is going to be a life or death thing. And some friends with really compromised immune systems and stuff. But there can be healthy young people too. I mean, there are doctors dying, members of parliament in Iran. You know, so we don't really know who's going to make it out on the other side, but some of us probably aren't. And life is probably going to change in the next couple days in a really big way. But right now we're kind of all acting like everything's normal and fine, and it's just weird. Isaac, give me your toy. And then I was thinking about how did they deal with things like epidemics back in those days of homesteading out here, or even more recently, you know, look at the Spanish flu in 1918. And I was thinking about how frightening it would have been at that time. You didn't have a lot of news sources. I mean, you had newspapers and whatever, but here, Whiskers, you want a bite? You know, you just didn't have the constant availability of news like we do now, and in some ways that was probably actually good. I've had to like limit myself to how much news I watch because it can get so stressful. But you know, they wouldn't have known what to expect. They wouldn't, like, we can look at what happened in Italy and give us an idea of what might happen here, but they didn't have that availability back then. And what if you were being quarantined back then? You didn't have cell phones. Most people didn't have phones in their homes still, or a lot of people didn't. You sure didn't have the internet. You know, you didn't have that access to being able to interact and communicate with other people. And they didn't understand viruses or the flu the way that we do now. And they didn't have even, you know, the over-the-counter remedies that we have now. They didn't have then. And so, on one hand, I feel really blessed to be, I guess if you're going to be facing a pandemic, this is a good time to be facing it. Still scary. And so I'm looking back on that history and that tradition of how people who lived here in the past would have coped with such things and what I can learn from that. And then I was also thinking about spirituality and faith. I don't know if you're religious, kind of what your faith tradition is, but it seems like this might be a good time to hold on to that if you've got it, because I think that's something that people have used in the past to get through difficult times. And we're going to need that. I think we're going to need everything we've got to get through whatever might be to come. I don't know if I've said anything that anyone's going to find useful or interesting or not. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. Please feel free to share any suggestions or thoughts you have in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and I hope you all have a good evening.